All right, let's get right into it. We're about to explore a journey that did more than just cross a desert. It literally redrew the map of history. It's a story that shows us how strategy, faith, and these tiny, almost hidden moments can lead to the most monumental change you can imagine. So the story kicks off in the dead of night. A plan is set in motion, completely shrouded in darkness. But you gotta understand, this was so much more than just a physical journey. This was about leaving one entire world behind to build a completely new one. We are, of course, talking about the Hijrah, the migration of the Prophet Muhammad from Mecca, a journey that would, without a doubt, change everything that came after it. I mean, it's a massive question, isn't it? How can just one person's journey change the entire course of history? Well, the answer? It's always in the details. It's in the careful planning, it's about the people you trust with your life, and the principles you refuse to let go of, especially when everything is on the line. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack here. Now, the first thing to get straight is that this was not some panicked escape. Not at all. The departure from Mecca was this incredibly intricate operation. I mean, every single move was calculated. Every possible risk was assessed. This was a masterclass in strategy, really, built on two things: absolute trust and some very clever deception. Okay, check this out. The whole plan hinged on misdirection. The final destination was Medina, which is north of Mecca. So where did they go first? They went south, the complete opposite direction. They took what the historical sources call unused and unknown roads. It was just a brilliant move. It was designed to throw the Quraysh search parties completely off their scent right from the get-go. And this just goes to show a leader's plan is only as good as the team executing it. And the prophet, he chose exactly the right person for each specific, critical task. You had Ali, who acted as the decoy, literally sleeping in the prophet's bed to buy them precious time. You had Abdullah ibn Abu Bakr, he was the intelligence guy, gathering intel on what the enemy was up to. Asma, who risked everything to bring them food and water. Amer, a shepherd, who cleverly used his flock of sheep to just erase their footprints from the sand. And then you have the guide. And this is where it gets really interesting. The guide, Abdullah ibn Uraqat, he wasn't a Muslim, he was a polytheist. And yet he was the one entrusted with this life or death mission. Why? Because he was the best at what he did and everyone knew he was trustworthy. I mean, that's a huge lesson in pragmatism right there. It shows that expertise and character were valued above everything else. All right, so after that initial successful evasion, the next phase of the journey begins. The prophet and his companion, Abu Bakr, they find refuge in a cave, and for 3 days, they just wait. You can imagine this was the ultimate test of both patience and faith. And it's here, in this cave, that one of the most famous events of the whole journey takes place. Just as the pursuers are getting dangerously close, a spider, by divine will, weaves a web right across the entrance. I mean, think about that. A defense so fragile, so delicate, and yet it was perfect. It just seemed to defy all logic. Seriously, just try to imagine being inside that cave. It's dark, it's silent, and then you hear voices. You see the shadows of the search party moving right past the entrance. You are inches away from being discovered. The tension must have been just unbearable. And yet, in that moment, Abu Bakr wasn't scared for himself. The sources are clear. His only fear was for the safety of the prophet and for the future of the message he carried. In this verse from the Quran, it just perfectly captures that exact feeling. It really speaks to a central theme of this whole story, right? The idea that when human planning and strategy have done all they can, when you've reached your absolute limit, that's when divine aid takes over. It's such a powerful statement on trust and reliance. But they weren't out of the woods yet. Not by a long shot. Once they finally left the cave and were back out on the open road, a new threat appears on the horizon. A bounty hunter named Seerah. And he was tempted by this massive reward that was put on their heads, and he was closing in fast. But then, something just incredible happens. Every time Seerah would try to charge forward on his horse, the ground itself seemed to turn against him. His horse's legs would sink deep into the sand, just stopping him dead in his tracks. It happened again and again. He was physically being prevented from getting any closer. So after seeing this happen multiple times, Seerah finally gets it. He realizes he's up against something far beyond his own power. So he gives up the chase and asks for safety. And it's in this moment of extreme vulnerability for the prophet, that something truly remarkable happens. a prophecy is made. The prophet tells this bounty hunter, the man who was just trying to capture him, that one day he will wear the bracelets of Kisra, the emperor of Persia. Just pause and think about that for a second. They are literally fleeing for their lives, and in that moment, he's talking about a future where one of the greatest empires on earth would fall. It's a promise that must have sounded completely impossible. But years later, it was fulfilled. This really shows that the journey was never just about getting from point A to point B. It was so much more. Because even on the run, even in the middle of this high-stakes escape, the mission to teach and to guide, it never stopped. Every single encounter was seen as an opportunity. And that brings up a really fascinating question, right? For anyone who's dedicated to a cause. How do you keep that mission alive when your own survival is on the line? Well, the answer seems to be you embed it into everything you do. It becomes a part of your every action. There's actually a really powerful parallel here with another prophet, Prophet Yusuf or Joseph. Remember, he was unjustly thrown into prison, but he didn't just sit there in despair. No, he used that time to teach his fellow inmates about God. And in the very same way, Prophet Muhammad, while fleeing through the desert, meets a man named Bradea and his tribe, and he stops. He takes the time to invite them to Islam. And these verses, they kind of describe Yusuf's whole approach in that prison. He finds common ground first, and then he presents his message. And that really is the timeless prophetic method, isn't it? It doesn't matter what your circumstances are, whether you're in a prison cell or a wide-open desert, the call to faith and goodness, it just keeps going. And so, finally, after 13 long, hard days, this incredible journey reaches its destination. The arrival in Medina, well, it marked the beginning of a new dawn. And not just for the travelers, but really for the entire world. You can just almost feel that sense of relief, can't you? That visual shift from the harsh, hostile desert to the green, welcoming palm groves of the city. This was it. This was the moment where hope and the idea of a new community could finally take root. But before we wrap up, there's one last little story from the moment of arrival that I think reveals so much about the prophet's character. And it all comes down to a simple transaction. So get this. Abu Bakr, his closest friend and companion on this whole dangerous trip, offers the camel he rode as a gift, a completely understandable gesture. But the prophet refuses. He insists on paying the full price for it. The lesson in that one small act is just crystal clear. A leader, or really anyone with a great responsibility, should always strive for their own independence. You should aim to be a giver, not a taker. It's this profound statement on dignity and self-reliance that really defined who he was. And that right there brings us full circle. This journey that began in total darkness and secrecy, it ends with a brand new sunrise. It wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning, the founding moment of a community, an entire calendar, and a civilization that would go on to shape history for centuries. And to think, it all started with one meticulous plan, a handful of incredibly brave and trusted people, and an unwavering faith during a perilous journey across the desert. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If this was the beginning, what on earth would the future hold?